the stock market took a tumble. It's been crashing because of DeepSeek.
And I wanted to call in specifically about the DeepSeek because in China, I guess they built this thing for a couple of dollars or something like that.
Well, basically, they rival OpenAI's ChatGPT, and it's turning heads because it only took $6 million to develop, whereas OpenAI has literally poured billions of dollars into training their models and refining them and working with them, on top of the U.S. government saying they're planning to invest over trillions of dollars in the coming years. They filed for in-kind redemptions for the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF. Dom, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, my first thoughts are that SIBO is also the name of a famous rapper out of Sacramento. Workers are trying to unionize is because they are trying not to get swallowed up by increasing prices in energy, housing, much higher inflation than is reflected through the inflation reports.
You save in Bitcoin, how you're escaping or you're, surpassing things that are trying to, escape the rate of inflation. So basically, Bitcoin's doing better than all other assets in terms of escaping inflation.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Tools of the Trade podcast. I'm Dom Bay. I'm with the legendary Chris Alamo. Here, we are bringing Bitcoin signal for the worker and wage earner. And we put signal over subs, unless Jersey Mike's, again, if you are listening or watching, we're interested in the sponsorship, and we will consider subs over signal in that sense.
We are also,
Alamo.
we're also accepting Quick Check, Wawa, anywhere that sells subs. But no, honestly, like, subscribe, comment. We really appreciate it. Helps out a lot. So, what's on the docket today, Dom? We got a bunch of stuff.
What's on the docket? Get us started. I'm hearing some news out of a very known worker hub in American history, Chicago. What are they cooking over there for in-kind?
Shouts out to our boy Joe Carlisari, but not your keys, not your coins. The Chicago Board Options Exchange, commonly referred to as SIBO, files to allow in-kind redemptions for Bitcoin spot ETFs. This comes on this was news from Monday. Last Friday, our boys, Larry Fink, he listener of the pod, loves the pod. They filed for in-kind redemptions for the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF. Dom, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, my first thoughts are that SIBO is also the name of a famous rapper out of Sacramento. But for the SIBO out of Chicago, huge development. Everyone knows that in-kind creation and redemption is a very interesting development. It's something that can really bring a ton of new participants into the market. As always, read the source documents. I did take a look at the filing myself. Saw somewhere something along the lines of a minimum 5,000 share basket creation in this process, which according to the SIBO filing for ARK, their current share price is $100. So we're looking at a minimum of $500,000. So pretty large starting point. That may change or not be the case. And then the authorized participant looks like the one that's going to be able to do the in-kind redemption and creation. And so the ETF itself won't necessarily handle the Bitcoin with the customer, but the authorized participant that have to set up an account there. So huge development, though. Ton of them are filing, and it seems when we get filings of this magnitude and they're all piling in, that they know something that maybe we don't, that approval is highly likely, especially when you factor in the recent changes in leadership in the SEC, with, Hester Pierce becoming a much more significant player there who's been pro Bitcoin digital asset.
Yeah, I think it's going to start exactly as Dom mentioned, for the institutional investor first. So unfortunately, while I think many people will be excited, they're like, sweet, I got $1,000, $10,000, hey, maybe even $100K in a Bitcoin ETFs, but that might still be below the threshold in order to withdraw to self-custody. So we hope this further develops. We hope those prices and competition pushes the amount that you can take out down. So obviously that would help the worker or the everyday man keeping their Bitcoin in cold storage. But on to the next story. Someone else that loves Bitcoin, Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy bought another 10,107 Bitcoin for a price valued at $1.1 billion. Our boy Michael Saylor is not leaving any Bitcoin for us plebs and the workers. Dom, what are your thoughts?
Saylor's committed. The relentless march towards mass Bitcoin accumulation continues. I think he's committed to hitting 500,000 Bitcoin. How close is he? What is he at on the what does this put him at total Bitcoin? Again, this is MicroStrategy's Bitcoin, correct? This is not Saylor's.
Yeah, MicroStrategy's. He has. I mean, MicroStrategy has about 470,000 Bitcoin. I think. Michael Saylor, I think, personally holds about 19 to 20,000 himself. That's what I remember last seeing reported. So Michael Saylor still got a decent amount in his own personal stash, but obviously he's the the main shareholder of MicroStrategy as well.
An interesting point for the everyday worker wage earner that maybe uses MicroStrategy as a proxy. I saw a tweet go out a while back that said something along the lines of, oh, they can't sell our Bitcoin, as shareholders of MicroStrategy. And it's important to remember that when you own shares of MicroStrategy, you own the company shares. You do not own the Bitcoin. The company owns the Bitcoin. Um, I don't know the details of that aspect, but something important for the everyday worker wage earner. Remember, nothing beats the real thing. And when you hold MicroStrategy, you own shares of that company. Now they're committed and they've shown a long-term commitment to holding their Bitcoin. But again, kind of like we started off with SIBO, not your keys, not your coins, still applies.
Yeah, and their exact amount was 471,107 Bitcoin. So, yep,
Okay,
there's
so
that.
a couple more than our boy Alemo. Not much, but they're starting to kind of leave you in the dust a little bit, Chris.
No, yeah, I'm not saying how much I have. Let's just say they're catching up. So commemorating the legacy of Hal Finney. This one's a little bit of a longer story. So on Friday, it was the 17th year anniversary of when Hal said this famous quote, or sorry, 16-year anniversary of when Hal said, I am drawing a blank on this. I am
The
drawing
computer as a tool.
the computer as a tool. Yes, here it is. The computer can be used as a tool to liberate and protect people rather than control them. So he said this in November of 1992, over 17 years before receiving the first ever Bitcoin transaction. Commemorating Hal, for those that don't know, Hal Finney is the GOAT. You think of the Mount Rushmore of Bitcoin, there's Satoshi Nakamoto and his mysterious figure, and then Hal's right next to him. There's up for debate for the who 3 and 4 would be on Mount Rushmore, but Hal was a legendary cypherpunk and computer programmer, worked on projects all throughout the days of trying to create peer-to-peer digital cash. Many of them failed, over the years. Dom, I know I recommended the book, the Genesis book by Aaron Van Weerdum. Great book. Dom was like, Elemo, I don't like reading, I'm kind of illiterate, but he read through the book. He scampered through, loved it, said it was one of his favorite Bitcoin books. I will attest to that as well. It's one of my favorite as well. But yeah, Cal was an optimist. He saw the world in great light, and that basically that cypherpunks can write code in order to fight Orwellian state that we find ourselves in. And get rid of the Metas, the Amazons, the Googles, and all this that are trying to encroach on your data and your privacy. So, long story short, unfortunately, Hal lost his life to ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, in August of 2014, I believe. And he lost his fight, but yeah, I mean, Hal was awesome. He was he was the first person to receive Bitcoin from Satoshi back on January 12th, 2009. And then Hal said, Bitcoin has a couple things going for it. It can be distributed with no single point of failure, no mint, no company, with officers that can be subpoenaed and arrested and shut down. This was on January 24th, 2009. And he's succeeded by his wife, Fran Finney. She's awesome. She said, she did a legendary tweet or a note over on Nostr saying running Nostr from his famous tweet of running Bitcoin back in January of 2009. So, Dom, I know that was a mouthful, but what are your thoughts on Hal, the legendary Hal?
My first thoughts are, Chris, I'm pretty sure I recommended the Genesis book to you. But you remember it how you remember it. That was an incredible book, highly recommended. Shout out to Andrew Van Werdum. Just an amazing written book. And again, we talk about on this show all the time. The genesis story of Bitcoin is extremely important over time. We see a lot of Wall Street institutional players really focusing on the pristine asset side of Bitcoin, and the continuation of kind of the dilution of Bitcoin's genesis story, I think, will continue. So it's really important upon us as Bitcoiners to share that story. Hal is a huge part of that story. the genesis of Bitcoin, Hal is right there, right smack in the center of it. He proceeded, as you mentioned in the Genesis book, he preceded the creation of Bitcoin with a ton of work on privacy and cryptography. Um, we're talking about a special individual that I think has the ability to inspire people outside of Bitcoin because of the way that he lived his life and the values that he stood for. So I know at the peer-to-peer street festival we did last year, me and Brecky were kind of working on some kind of memorial dedication to Hal, potentially, in California, especially since he spent so much time there. I worked the marathon that he ran in, the LA marathon, and didn't finish that marathon. I didn't know at the time who he was. I didn't know Bitcoin. So that's a key piece. But I think in his running Bitcoin, we're all just continuing the work of those that came before us, and Hal laid us some incredible building blocks and gave us some great direction and leaders' intent as to how to use Bitcoin for the benefit of everyone. So, yeah, learn about Hal, share Hal's story because it inspires people to learn about the origins of Bitcoin, which are critical to its future.
Yeah, and there was a great book, The Book of Satoshi. It was written by Phil Champagne.
Oh, that's
Um,
another one I recommended to you.
Yes, it's a
Yeah.
good one as well. So it's got a bunch of writings, obviously all of Satoshi's writings on the Bitcoin Talk forums. Hal is obviously an integral part of that, asking questions, and he was ever the optimist. I know Rizzo, Pete Rizzo, has always said that like Hal is always the optimist, where Satoshi is more monotone or bearish, or sometimes gets angry. Was just kind of very analytical engineering mind. But Hal was, obviously super positive, and he's greatly missed. We stand on the shoulders of giants, Hal being one of them for sure. Moving on to our next story, talking about giants. On Monday, the stock market took a tumble, been crashing because of DeepSeek. I know I was like, what is that? Deep Seat? Is that Seat Geek? What is that? DeepSeek. DeepSeek is this new Chinese AI platform, just like ChatGPT, just like Midjourney, just like any of these different models. Llama from Meta has their own open source version, but basically it's a new AI model. But why is the stock market crashing because of this? You thought it'd be optimistic, people in the AI space. Well, basically they rival OpenAI's ChatGPT, and it's turning heads because it only took $6 million to develop, whereas OpenAI has literally poured billions of dollars into training their models and refining them and working with them, on top of the US government saying they're planning to invest over trillions of dollars in the coming years. But, if you're condensing this down to $6 million to make a model that's rivaling ChatGPT or even better, many people are like, oh my gosh, maybe this is wasted money. Maybe training models isn't worth it. Obviously, yeah, there's all those different things as well. Do we have a caller today? I think someone was calling in about DeepSeek.
We have a caller.
I think.
I,
Rank and File is taking off on the webs. Another
Uh,
celebrity call in. Do you guys mind if I
bring him
bring
in.
him in?
yeah. This is crazy. I don't understand how these folks I don't even know we had a number. Hello, can you hear me? Can you guys hey Chris, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Who is this?
This is Arnold Schwarzenegger here, and I wanted to call in specifically about the DeepSeek because in China, I guess they built this thing for a couple of dollars or something like that. The AI is it's like Skynet. I tried to tell the people this is going to be a big deal. And AI, they're going to keep building it until one day it's going to take over, and you don't even know what you're going to be doing. The AI is going to try to lift the weights for you, and you won't even be lifting the weights. The AI will be lifting the weights. Either way, you're going to need Bitcoin because Bitcoin is the one thing that can defeat the AI. It's like me in Terminator. It's going to defeat the Skynet. So trust me, stack your coin and don't fall for some of these tricks to take your Bitcoin out of your pockets. You guys are doing a hell of a job for the workers, and keep it going. Come on. Thank you guys, and I'm out of here.
Thank you, Arnold. Wow, that was a pleasure, a treat.
Okay. Dang, I don't if that was the ex-governor, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty sweet. Dom, you got some connects. It seems like California's catching on to watching the show.
I think he brings up a good point. I think Bitcoin may be, Big Mike Saylor talked about this, how Micropayments using Bitcoin, right? Maybe something to keep accountability for AI in the future, as it gets better built out. So that'll be interesting to see. I do want to bring up one thing, Chris, is that we all have a lot of folks that we know that are kind of Bitcoin sideliners, and NVIDIA is something that comes up very frequently in my conversations, where you have folks that just say, hey, NVIDIA is going to, it's anticipated. All these institutional fund managers are saying NVIDIA is going to go up, 10x over the next, several years. It's going to be a huge performer. They're always talking about it has very little to no downside. Bitcoin's much more volatile. Why would I hold Bitcoin when I can just get the same outsized returns with NVIDIA? Great lesson today on the vulnerabilities of companies and holdings with third-party exposure. So not to say that things can't send Bitcoin price up and down, but at the end of the day, a company like any company, NVIDIA, they're going to be vulnerable to outside factors. Here's one we saw. They had a pretty massive drop off in their book value. I think they lost like 500 billion, got wiped off of the stock.
562 billion in equity value.
Yeah. So again, AI is a super competitive field, and it just brings up that point that it felt good holding Bitcoin potentially, when you see other calamities. As I'm sure other markets, like holding what they hold when they see calamities in Bitcoin. But I don't know. Lately, Bitcoin has just been this stable run up that, yeah, it has some little ups and downs, but it just holds even through, I think it did pretty well through this AI contagion and everyone freaking out and all this value getting wiped off the market. I think we dipped under 100K very briefly.
Yeah, it was
and
like
then popped back
97,
up.
98, and then pop back over 100 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this kind of just plays into Jeff Booth's thesis. For those that don't know, Jeff Booth, Price of Tomorrow, also a book that Dom recommended me, Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth. And he says technology is deflationary. So what that basically means is over time, products get better, but they get cheaper. The TV that you can buy today for, a few $100 is way better than the TV you could buy in the 90s, when that like the big gigantic screens, and they're not plasma, they're not LED, or, they're not 4K, 8K, 10K, however much they are. So they only get better, and they get priced cheaper and cheaper for better technology. So I think this is just OpenAI going through the, through this, that they're spending a ton of money and someone's beating them by a fraction of the cost. Moving on to Union Hall rundown. So Dom, give it to us. Lay us on.
Yeah, just a couple of things. Again, we focus on workers and wage earners, and so Bitcoin education for them, especially at Proof of Workforce. So I saw a couple interesting stories. I saw Whole Foods workers out of Philly, near you, East Coast, were the first to unionize a Whole Foods. And interesting story there. I guess it was a close vote. They did a vote, and it was something like 56% to 60% approved to join the union. There were some claims about union busting and delayed raises from Whole Foods, which Whole Foods said on the record that they did to not appear to be influencing votes. So they delayed a pay raise. Either way, there's a lot of similar movements taking place throughout the country. And, it's this continuing story of Amazon, some of the bigs like Amazon, Tesla, et cetera, dealing with what I would characterize as a growing desire to unionize from workers, out of factories, supermarkets, et cetera. So yeah, very, very interesting development there. And, we'll see how that kind of plays out and what happens in the future.
What's the next story from our boy Donnie? What'd he say? What'd he do?
Donnie, I guess, fired the chair of the National Labor Relations Board, and this is very interesting election, as we are aware. I think the Dems overall took a little bit of they've notoriously always had labor and union workers as supporters. And this election really saw a departure from the rank and file, formerly our show name, Rank and File. Saw a departure from the rank and file that voted for President Trump. And one of the criticisms from leadership is that, hey, the Republicans are more famously unfavorable towards unions, and especially in the appointments of positions like the National Labor Relations Board. This is interesting because the chair of the National Labor Relations Board said that she felt she was fired not legally, because the policy, the law says you can only remove the chair of the NLRB due to incompetence and breach of responsibility. And I guess the letter that was sent to her, and we still need to verify this, kind of said like, hey, I'm just swapping you out because the NLRB hasn't done a good job. So I don't know what's going to come of that, but these appointments matter, right? Because the story we just read about the grocery workers at Amazon, at Whole Foods unionizing, they have an impact. So for the workers out there, it'll be interesting to see how these changes kind of what they mean and what some of the positions are for, folks in unions and labors and stuff like that. Again, most of this stuff comes up to a similar ethos with Bitcoin, and that is workers trying to keep pace with runaway inflation. And the same reason that workers are trying to unionize is because they are trying not to get swallowed up by, increasing prices in energy, housing, a much higher inflation than is reflected through the inflation reports. And so, it's interesting because you have a group of people that are looking to unionize to keep up with wages, but then you also have Bitcoin, which can keep up with inflation and really has outpaced inflation since its inception. And so you have these two things kind of coming along in parallels. And again, as you know, one of our missions at Proof of Workforce is to show where the intersection is between organized labor, workers, and Bitcoin. So yeah, just a little rundown for folks on what's going on out there in the union labor world.
Yeah, and there's as Dom and I advocate for, obviously not financial advice, got to say that, but a way that you can escape inflation if you're not getting the pay raises needed to escape it is to save in Bitcoin. That's something that we can do, and we have the data to back it up. So there's this great website called Priced in Bitcoin 21, all one word.com. And it shows just like everything from fiat currencies to precious metals to commodities to bond markets to equity to housing to wages. If you save in Bitcoin, how you're escaping or you're, surpassing things that are trying to, escape the rate of inflation. So basically, Bitcoin's doing better than all other assets in terms of escaping inflation. Obviously, it can vary on a month to month, even year to year or 1 year basis. But even if you look at the 3-year, definitely the 5-year basis, you're way out exceeding the money printing and inflation that's going on in the world. So great website to look at when you're feeling down or you want to look at stuff. It's a great one to lift some spirits if you're saving in Bitcoin for sure.
Yeah, Alemo, maybe we should also kind of wrap up here with a little rundown of stuff in the works for Proof of Workforce. I know.
Give it a rapid fire.
Yeah, so talked to a labor association yesterday. We continue to make presentations. We have some unique developments, I think, in a few labor unions that will hold Bitcoin in self-custody. A couple of them will make history in the first of their kind. Those should be coming. That they'll be finalizing that soon, and hopefully we'll be able to send that out and share it. We have some work at the state level. We were able to connect with an assembly member, Philip Chen, out of California, to try and develop some legislation for the state for this session. That's currently in the works, and we may be doing some work in Joe's neighborhood out in Illinois. So we're going to continue to look into that. I'm coming up. I'm going to be going to El Salvador here shortly, and I'll be on a panel with Samson Mao, Ambassador Milena Mayorga, and Ken Sims, the mayor of Vancouver, and Lana Negretti, the mayor of Santa Monica, where we're going to be talking about the global race to accumulate Bitcoin. So yeah, lots of workers, wage earners, and unions are starting to reach out, and our work with, unions and pensions continues. And I think it's going to be a very busy year. We got the Fed announcement today. It'll be interesting to see. I don't know if that already came out. That may be happening right now, but whether they held
Normally
rates
they
the
send
same.
out the meeting notes at, I think, 2 p.m. Eastern, so 11 a.m. Pacific. So we still got a few hours before we hear something from the Fed.
Folks are saying this is going to be a rate stay the same announcement, and they felt like they've never felt more
Sure.
more sure of this, which means I'm sure something crazy will be happening, and we'll be messaging each other later like, what the hell just happened? And of course, we know more important than the rate is the messaging and the confidence that Jerome Rome puts out at the
I want to
hearing.
add one point to that. So obviously, Trump being back in office, the media was asking him, "Oh, so what are your thoughts on interest rates? Where should they be?" And there's been fighting words even before the election, or at least after the election, but before Trump took office, where Trump was saying, "I think I know interest rates better than Jerome," and Jerome's like, "I plan to fulfill my term." I think his spot is up, or it comes up in either 2026 or 2027. And President Trump was like, "I'm going to fire his ass if I have to." So there's a lot of back and forth, and we're going to find out who's more powerful, the president of the United States or the chair of the New York Board of Governors, which is obviously called the Federal Reserve, but it's not federal, and there's no reserves. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see who is the most powerful man in the world. There's a case to be made for both, to be honest.
You know what's interesting about both of those, Chris?
What?
Both are pawns in the chess game that is Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And the Bitcoin progresses on and continues to change the country. So we're gonna see how that plays out. But Bitcoin rolls on. One last thing, is that a Sparrow hat you're rocking right now?
Oh yeah, dude. Of course.
Huge fan of Sparrow. Shout out to Craig Raw. Again, we talk about the importance of self-custody. Ton of what I've learned in self-custody came from running the halls of Sparrow and just figuring things out on there, from UTXO management to multi-sig. Unbelievable open source software project.
We might need to have, Satoshi, Hal Finney, Craig Raw might be the third guy on Mount Rushmore, to be honest. A legendary developer created, as Dom was saying, Sparrow Wallet. I agree. It's probably one of the best products, if not the best product on the market.
Yeah. And that just comes from the heart. There's no, we haven't even talked to Craig, and, but we got to get him on the show or something like that. So
Definitely. Would love to. All right. I think that's a wrap, Dom. Anything else you want to add, or are we good?
that's it. For the record, you did make the recommendations to me on the book. I will come clean on that. That was a great book. I would just say for today, for everyone listening, for our massive group, don't be confused by things like name changes. Find source documents. Read the source whenever you can. Look at the filing if you want to learn about SIBO filing for, in-kind redemption, and continue to read high quality signal on things like self-custody and the origin of Bitcoin. So that's it for today. And then we'll be getting back next week. And I think we'll have some very cool guests on. Check out the channel, Proof of Workforce, on YouTube. We'll have more content coming at you. Signal before subs, but again, if you do want to hit that sub button, we ain't mad at you. And Jersey Mike's, if you are listening to this episode, we are 100% open to the idea of some kind of sponsorship of an Italian cold cut style sandwich to sponsor our show. And in that case, we will temporarily put subs over signal.
Definitely. Have a good one, everyone. Peace.